Yeah, so we're basically going to talk about the MAAC stuff that's been going on for the racing. Like you said, you had some new news and stuff like that. But that's going to be followed after, or like, first we're going to start off with a couple videos. One is from Lewis P. Floyd. He did a really cool AI type of video. It's the first 4 minutes of the live stream once it actually starts. And then we're going to play a couple user videos, like not user videos, I call them user videos, I don't know why, pilot videos from other people who've submitted stuff. And we're basically going to talk about why those should be remote ID or why those should be affected by it. And then we'll jump into like the racing. Nope. Oh, yes, you can hear me.
Lights off.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Face for radio.
The ideal voice for print.
Here are a few
Welcome in,
reasons why
everybody.
remote ID is overregulation.
Hello, everyone.
Privacy
we're on.
concerns. Remote ID requires
we're
drones
off.
or other unmanned aircraft systems
Anything
UAS,
can happen in
to
battle
broadcast
talks.
identifying information to authorities or nearby devices.
What's the next line?
Actually, I think
This raises concerns
I
about
think Xjet
privacy
has the best
as it
voice
could
in
enable
FPV.
constant tracking
You
of
could do
UAS
radio.
operations
I
and
don't know.
potentially compromise
I don't
personal
think so.
data.
I applied for a job as a
If
radio
adequate measures
announcer
to protect
when I left
privacy
school,
are not
and they said
implemented,
go away.
opposition from privacy
So I
advocates
went
or
away.
legal challenges may arise,
there you go.
impeding the successful
So
implementation
maybe you need to come to
of
Canada
remote
where,
ID.
you know, the ladies think the New Zealand accent's sexy, right?
Yeah, someone's got to.
You're down there, you're just, you know, just another guy. And then
Technical
up here, you're
challenges.
like, oh,
Implementing a
that Kiwi
reliable and
accent.
comprehensive
Yeah,
remote ID
well.
system can be complex. It requires a robust infrastructure to support real-time tracking and identification of numerous UAS simultaneously. Ensuring
Well-
compatibility across various types of drones and
Are we
UAS
able
can
to
be
see the
challenging,
comments somehow?
especially if different
If you go to-
manufacturers use different communication protocols or standards.
Go to YouTube, pop the chat out
Technical
into a separate window.
difficulties and limitations may arise during the
do
development
think
and
that our
deployment
audio
of
is
remote ID,
over the
potentially
video.
hindering its effectiveness.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Cost and accessibility. The implementation of remote ID could involve
Looks like
significant
all the regulars
costs
are coming
for drone
in.
operators, manufacturers, and regulatory bodies. Drone owners might need to retrofit existing drones or purchase new ones that comply with remote ID requirements. The financial burden associated with these changes could discourage some individuals or organizations from adopting remote ID, particularly if they consider it unnecessary or burdensome. Limited accessibility to affordable remote
Is
ID
this all AI?
solutions might also slow down its
Madness.
widespread adoption.
I just brought regular I. And it was a lowercase one too.
Yeah.
Non-compliance and enforcement challenges. Even with the introduction of remote ID regulations, ensuring widespread
My mouth is a little
compliance can
weird.
be difficult.
I guess we're supposed
Some drone operators might choose not to comply, either intentionally or due to a lack of awareness. Enforcing remote ID requirements across a large number of UAS operators and monitoring their adherence to the regulations could be
Flying?
resource-intensive and challenging for regulatory bodies. Inadequate enforcement and non-compliance could undermine the effectiveness and purpose of remote ID.
That's why we're here, Johnny D.
Opposition from drone hobbyists and recreational users. Remote ID regulations might face resistance from drone hobbyists and recreational users who perceive it as overly restrictive or burdensome. These individuals may argue that the existing voluntary community-based safety guidelines are sufficient to ensure responsible drone operation and that remote ID imposes unnecessary regulations on their activities. If their concerns are not adequately addressed, it could lead to opposition and potential legal challenges. It's important to remember that the success or failure of remote ID implementation depends on various factors, including the specific regulations, technological advancements, stakeholder collaboration, public perception, and the ability to address concerns effectively.
Who made this video? Wow. I haven't even tried to say it yet.
Indeed.
Oh yeah, it was Taco Thursday, so I'm happy as a pig and you know what. Tacos. Oh, there's video. Mm-hmm.
It's pretty fixed. It's been fixed for a while. The only people that need to register little things like this are Part 107 operators. And so they'll have like a 20-gram drone with a 25-gram remote ID unit on it, which is kind of crazy. And of course, the FAA did say that if you want to use something like this to check the roof on your house after a storm, you'll have to get Part 107 certification and put remote ID on it as well, because that's a commercial opera. It's not recreational, so you have to get 107 to do that. Check your own roof after a storm. That's the problem, I think, that the FAA has such a disconnect with us in the hobby that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems to be all of it is that disconnect. If they would just talk to somebody or just study it, it would make life a lot easier for everybody.
Yeah, but that's the problem. They
wouldn't
have
have to track all of
deliberately,
us.
they've deliberately sidelined, disenfranchised the hobby, because going back a few years, we had the AMA and we had Brendan Schulman and a couple of others representing the hobby on these committees that they form, but they've now thrown everybody off. The only people you'll see on those committees are corporate interests, Boeing's and Airbus and Google and Amazon. There is not one single solely representative person on any of those committees. It's like we don't exist. It's like suddenly, the hobby is just an inconvenience, not an essential part of the whole aviation, industry or the whole aviation place.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is in Canada, Bruce, they just came out with a proposal for a whole raft of new regulations that, they won't take effect till 2024, 2025 sort of timeframe. But one significant thing, so it's a document about 127 pages long, and my eyes are bleeding from reading it. But the interesting thing is when they first started talking about the stuff that's in here, like BVLOS flights and stuff, they had nothing about recreational pilots in it, nothing. They explicitly listed the set of stakeholders, and it was training providers, manufacturers of drones, explicitly non-recreational. These were the stakeholders that they listed 2 years ago. Now, in every single section of this giant document, recreational drone pilots have a major component listed. So they talk about the impact on manufacturers and trainers and commercial operators and cargo people and all this, and recreational. It's astonishing. Like, it's a turnaround of 180 degrees from 2 years ago. It's refreshing. Now, don't get your hopes up. If you actually read this stuff, it's a lot of it is gibberish. Like at one point they say that the new regulations will benefit recreational pilots in Canada by $12 million. It's like, oh, how are they? And it's down to the penny. It's like 12,206,056.
How do I get a piece of that pie?
I know. I was
gonna say, like, how do
Got
we
put on a
benefit
business shirt.
$12 million?
They mail it out to you. It's fine.
Well, all you have to, I'm gonna stop droning. Just cash it in, and I'll take my money now. Thanks.
Is it like a buyback?
The way they do it is for all of this cost benefit stuff, they have magic formulas and magic numbers that they use to determine the cost and the benefit. And for recreational stuff, you actually benefit, according to them, $84 and I think it's 42 cents, $84, but roughly Canadian, of course, of benefit for every hour of recreational droning that you do. And so they base everything on that. It's like, well, now you're going to do more flights that are behind trees. Well, actually not behind trees, behind buildings, because one of the new regulations says you can now fly behind a building. So, if you do that for, and then they work it out, it's like 3 minutes times 6,000, this and that. And then they come up with $12 million of benefit. It's
to the country,
ludicrous,
not to us, though.
Right. That's how government works.
Are they going to send me an $84 check every time? A check for $84 every time I put my goggles on?
Every hour.
Every hour.
Well, I put in an hour and a half of flying today, so
all right, $20
to
you.
There you go.
Oh, they'll tax that, of course.
Is this part of the welfare state you have in Canada?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's like free healthcare.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess.
But the good news, if there's any good news at all in this new pile of regulations, is that there's nothing about remote ID. There's one little subtlety, but it doesn't ever say remote ID. There's nothing about remote ID. There's no changes to the rules for drones that are under 250 grams. It's still basically, don't do anything stupid. We'll leave you alone. And so that's good and refreshing. And then there's a couple of semi-nice things that they've done, and the rest of it's all for commercial guys. Big drone.
That's all it is for commercial.
Is it worded at all to be subject to change later on, or are they kind of setting this in stone, you think? Or
So the way it works is what was just announced was what is deemed a proposal. There's a 90-day consultation period till September 22nd, 2023. I know all this because I literally just recorded my video before coming on here. So September 22nd is the feedback, end of feedback. They will then take that and allegedly grind it up and throw it out, and then adjust the regulations accordingly to either fix mistakes that they made, and they did do a couple of mistakes, I think, or whatever. Probably do very little, to be honest. And then it will be announced formally in 2024. They don't give a date, and the effectiveness for or effective date for some of these things will be immediate, and other things won't be out until April the 1st, 2025.
Okay, so
That's
like a
long
slow
way.
rollout then.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you know, if you think about that it's taken since 2021 when they first proposed all this stuff to 2025 to get it done. That's 4 years. So if they're going to bring out remote ID, it's going to be at least 4 years from now, or from next year, or from whenever they
keep up the
catch their
pace.
breath.
It's funny, isn't it? Because here in New Zealand, our regulator is saying, they want to be forward-looking with their regulation. The rules we have at the moment are 8 years old already, so that they've been well out. A lot of the stuff is irrelevant. And I don't think regulators should be forward-looking because nobody can predict the future. What they need to be is agile and reactive to change. That's what they need, not forward-looking. Because there's no way the rules they make today are still going to be useful in 8 years' time. And if they try to make rules that look that far ahead, you end up with bad rules, and bad rules mean low compliance, which means the rules are less effective.
Yeah, and the big disappointment that I saw in these regulations, in the new regulations, is they did a number of tweaks to little things, just to make it a little easier to read and this kind of stuff. But they've retained all this prescriptive stuff about having to drag around your instruction manual with you and keep maintenance logs.
Yeah, maintenance logs is crazy.
Procedures and stuff. I mean, this is all well and good for the big drones. Move all that stuff to them.
Exactly, 100%.
And put one rule or a couple of rules for us that say you have to make sure your drone is safe to fly and that where you're flying is safe.
Yeah.
And have fun.
I find it amazing that Canada has the best sub 250 rules in the world, non-prescriptive, basically, just, don't hurt people, don't break their stuff. And yet they go so overboard as soon as you go to 251 grams. I mean, why does that 1 gram make all the difference? If you're going to put it on the basis of risk, then you've got to realize that there's very little difference between 250 and 251, but there's very little difference between 250 and 1 kg and so forth. So like in the EU, it's stratified. It was stratified by weight to quite a degree. It's far more granular in terms of how the rules apply. They base it around not only the risk profile of the craft, but the risk profile of the operation, which includes the area in which you're operating. So they've got it like really complex, unnecessarily complex. But you think there would still be a carve out for things that are obviously recreational based and do not pose a major risk. And that can be up to 1 kilogram, maybe a couple of kilos, we don't know. And it depends whether it's a fixed wing or a multi-rotor or like a glider. The thing that strikes me as crazy is I fly a lot of discus launch glider. I've got a glider that weighs about 280 grams. I throw it. That's its only source of motive power. And so I'm a 70-year-old man throwing a 280-gram glider. What danger do I pose to anybody? Because I don't do it in the middle of the high street. I do it out in a nice grassy field. So why would I have to register that? And in the US, why would I have to have a remote ID beacon on that? It makes no sense at all. There's just they try and lump everything into one basket. And for example, most countries don't carve out fixed wing hobby, a 250-gram foam model of a Piper Cub from a DJI M300. There's no distinction.
Yeah. Now, you didn't mention that you have razor blades all along the front of the wings, right?
Yes, right.
That's how you go faster.
Heat-seeking missiles.
Yeah.
He drops grenades on government buildings.
Yeah.
You put wings on that wood you're chucking around in your backyard there, Bruce, and have the remote ID on that.
Yeah, I'm practicing for my glider when I do that.
Yeah, that kind of brings us to like
ridiculous.
the whole why there are no FRIAs, why they've been basically, you submit them and then all of a sudden there's just nothing. Nobody, even private airspace that's in your own property, you can't even fly a FRIA in your own property.
I don't think they have
What's up with that?
I don't think they have the the systems in place to make them yet. You know what I
No,
mean?
there's a
They
technical
said
But they're
they
taking
took
the
it,
money.
They realized it took a lot of work, right?
But they're taking the money
Yeah,
for it.
exactly.
There's an environmental thing. There's been an environmental things gone out to comment, and they got a 90-day period after comment before they can then start actually approving them because of the environmental aspect of things. But I think we all know that the FRIA is a reluctant sop to the fact that there are model aircraft out there, traditional hobbyists. And initially, the FAA and the NPRM wanted to have a very limited number of FRIAs that aged out and weren't replaced. So they see it as a transitional phase between no one having remote ID and everybody having remote ID. So I think it wouldn't be surprising if they say they're going to have 32 staff at the FAA dealing with FRIA applications as of mid next month. But I wouldn't be surprised if those applications are processed very slowly. And when the 16th comes in September, a lot of AMA fields are left without FRIA status. Their members will have to go out and buy remote ID modules, at which stage the FAA could turn around and say, we no longer see a need for FRIAs because most of your members have modules. So we're going to cancel that whole program.
Yeah, now it's a new. Yeah.
Totally. I wouldn't be surprised.
And they've complied with the letter of what they've said they're going to do, but not the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not like they haven't changed their mind before.
I had never really thought about this before, but the FRIAs in the States are very similar to what the MAAC organization had in Canada, with their very specific sites that were specifically qualified and approved under an exemption, which effectively is what the FRIA is. And Transport Canada pulled that out from under them like a magician with a tablecloth.
Right.
Yeah, and it also shows a lack of understanding of the hobby, because if you go back like 30 years, virtually everyone that flew a model aircraft flew at a club and a club field. These days, it's a small percentage of the hobby. Most people are flying on their own property or in parks and schoolyards and things because of the adjunct of the small electric foam model, which may be anywhere from 300 grams to a kilogram. The whole composition and structure of the hobby has changed. So these FRIAs are not available to some poor kid that's living in a city and has to go down to the park and fly. It's not a good not a good match to the needs of the hobby anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
No.
And the FAA has already made a point. They're not going to be allocating FRIA status to any private residence or anything that isn't basically a community flying site. So people like Joshua Bardwell's applied to have his place a FRIA, and they've said no. And other groups have applied to have FRIAs in the area they control, but it's privately owned. They've been denied on that basis.
Right.
Which makes no sense.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's kind of funny too, because
a club is privately owned too, right?
Joshua Bardwell's situation was that they said that because he wasn't applying because his yard wasn't an educational space, so they didn't want to make it a FRIA for that sense. Yet he uses YouTube as a medium to educate people on the whole FPV flying thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
it's
who
kind of
here hasn't been educated by Joshua Bardwell in his backyard, right? I'm sure we all have learned something from Bardwell.
100%. His basement.
He's responsible for 90% of the new people in this.
At
learning
least
how to flash ELRS and set up their controllers.
all the same old questions over and over. Yeah.
The other problem with FRIA is
everybody's.
Well, the other problem with FRIAs in the USA is there are 115,000 educational institutions, and the FAA comes out and says, "Oh, we're supporting STEM, STEM," but they've said they only plan to allocate 4,000 FRIAs, with 2,500 AMA sites and 115,000 educational institutions. That leaves an awfully big shortfall.
Right. Big time.
It makes sense.
Yeah, this doesn't make sense at all there too. Craziness.
Yeah, I've always said they should declare Canada a FRIA so all of our American friends can just come up and fly here.
There you go.
With an
Well, that's the only way.
that,
That's
by
the only
the
way I
way,
see
is going
forward.
to cost $150 in starting in 2024.
150 for what, Don?
If you're a foreign, if you're commercial and flying in Canada, so if you're coming from the States and flying in Canada and you want to, and you're just doing it recreationally, you need to apply for a special flight authorization certificate, and it's going to be $150 to apply.
Wow.
Just to bring your drone across the border.
If it's over 250 grams.
And that's
Isn't
per
this
drone?
If it's commercial, it's $2,000 an application.
Holy.
But hang on a minute. Why we're
That's
told that
ridiculous.
we're pilots? You know, we're just like pilots of aircraft. We are pilots and have the responsibilities and that are pilots. Yet my pilot's license, I can fly an aircraft from one country to another, and I don't have to pay at the border to get a different certification or operating certificate. Pilot's licenses are pretty much international. Otherwise, airline pilots would have an awfully big job traveling from country to country with all their passengers in the back. So why is it that we get all the responsibilities and burdens of being a pilot and none of the privileges and benefits?
Right.
And they have all
Agree.
these
Yeah,
international meetings and get-togethers and boondoggles. Did I say boondoggles? Where these guys are getting together to discuss the regulations. Couldn't they say, you know what? I think those 107 or 107 guys, they can probably fly in Canada. Just waive their certificate and they can fly.
Right.
But no,
It's like
There's
any.
no
It's like
equivalency.
your driving license. Like most countries recognize other countries' automobile licenses. Like I can go to New Zealand and drive a car. I'm sure of it. I'm sure New Zealand recognizes
And we're on
Canadian
the other
driver's
side of the
license and
road.
vice
You know?
versa.
Even though we drive on the other side of the road, you're still
You'll be
trusted to
flying, you'll
drive
be on
here.
the other side, and everybody will be getting
Yeah,
out of
I've
your
been
way.
to England and I could drive. I've been to Africa and I could drive. I've been to Italy. I could drive. You know what I mean?
Of
Like,
course. Yeah.
But nobody can
can't
drive in
fly.
Italy.
yeah, I only did it for a little bit. In the
But it's
country,
interesting.
not in Rome or anything.
Because it's obviously not based on risk and safety, because look how many people die on the roads versus how many people die as a result of drone use. I mean, this is it. They pushed the safety thing, the narrative safety, for a long, long time until it became very obvious that it was a very disingenuous narrative to push given the lack of deaths and the lack of property damage. So
And they were
now they've
making
switched
up
to
stuff.
security. It's security now because no one can argue with security. And
Mm-hmm.
I go back to the thing where I said right back, rules should be proportional to risk. And if you want to impose this level of regulation and control on us, show us the risk assessment that justifies these rules. And they will never do it because it doesn't support their narrative. And yet when you do a complex operation, you have to do your own risk assessment. It's in the rules. If you want to do this, you got to do a risk assessment, identify the risks, management strategies, make it, document it all. Otherwise, you can't do that. But they can do anything they like with that. It's do as we say, not as we do. And I can't stand hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Big time.
it's ridiculous.
Hypocrisy, doesn't it?
Sorry, say that again, Chris.
Say again?
Hypocrisy runs democracy nowadays, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is
pretty much.
it's the lingua franca of politicians. Do as we say, not as we do. One set of rules for you, another set for us. Those who make the rules don't have to follow the rules. It's a sad indictment on society. But what can we do?
But as much as I agree with what you're saying, it's not the politicians that are making these rules or even providing any direction.
In America, it is. In the USA, it is. It was the politicians
Maybe
that drove
it
the
is, but
remote
in
ID.
Canada,
Yeah.
It's bureaucrats. It is
Yeah.
people who's, I have a job. I'm supposed to create rules. Well, surprise, surprise, they generate rules like every day.
I think they're paid by the page, aren't they?
I believe they are. Yeah,
Pretty much.
they're
No,
doing
word
very
count.
well.
Wow.
Well, it's the big corporations too, right? Amazon and Google want to own that airspace.
Hey, Brent Ariels.
So, you're gonna
Brent
listen to
Ariels
guys who
asks,
get billions, not
Americans
us.
can fly in Canada if they have a Canadian PIC. Isn't that the case? I don't know about that.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question and I can't see the chat.
Americans can fly in Canada if they have a Canadian PIC. Isn't that the case? Says Brent
Pilot in,
Ariels.
Pilot in charge.
Pilot in command? Is that what he means?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So if you
Then
got
they're
someone,
not flying.
Interesting.
well,
So you
the
got
pilot
somebody
in
to hold
command
your
can
hand,
stand
you can
beside them
fly.
and tell them what to do.
Yeah.
No.
Takes responsibility for the
Only
flight.
Americans under the age of 14 would be qualified for that. Because in Canada, if you're under 14, you can fly with an adult who's got his certificate as a supervisor. But as soon as they become a 40-year-old man, they can't be supervised anymore because you know what it's like. As soon as you become 15, you become uncontrollable. So
Ungovernable.
which is probably true, actually. But
Well, take a look at Bruce, right? Talking about ungovernable.
I
you
can
go.
understand that in the case of wives. Can't control my wife, but I don't know.
Yeah.
nor should you try.
No, it's very dangerous. I'll show you the bruises.
Yeah, that's one thing you learn as you get older.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, it's a
what
crazy
other
world.
question? AMA field closes AMA field 40 miles away. That sucks.
What? I don't even know where there's a club around where I am. Like I live in the middle of nowhere.
So here
It'd be
in
ridiculous. You know
Vancouver,
what I mean? Like,
BC, we've
I'm,
got like 3 or 4 MAAC fields in the area,
yeah.
but they're pretty much super strict. They even have like park patrol will come by and look at you and ask you what you're up to if you're flying at the field. And they're not
Wow.
even affiliated with any of it. They're just part of the park. But there's one field that I go to all the time in my videos, and it's a little bit out of the ways. It's more up in the mountain area of Coquitlam, and you can kind of just get away with it. And the last, I would say about a year now, we've been meeting up with all the people who used to be affiliated with MAAC, and they're just pilots. They fly wings, planes, whatever, custom build stuff. And years ago, when I started flying about 5 years ago, I would go to this flight field in the morning and stuff like that, and they would have their set time, set schedule of them as their affiliate. That was their time for their flight field and stuff, and that was all good and stuff. But it was a couple times I'd bring my drone out, and no drones, nothing like that, right? And now the past year, everybody flies together. Drones, wings, everybody, old guys, young
That's
guys,
cool.
new people. And I've been going there almost every weekend now, and it's been awesome. And I've totally changed too. I've been flying wings and planes now, and line of sight even, and it's a blast. I love this hobby. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So I'm definitely all over the board on all this type of drone stuff, and I hope it all, like you said, it's all basically taking us all in, right? So we're all in it together.
Yeah.
With
lovely as
MAAC
well,
and
yeah.
everything. We've got this issues that you wanted to bring up with the racing environment. Don, you want to talk a little bit about how
with the racing
Oh
environment.
yeah. It's
yeah, and
great-
how that's going to
ridiculous.
change things. I mean, I'm a more freestyle person, and a lot of us might be just into freestyle, but racing is obviously a huge part of it too. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'll be honest. I have never done FPV, and I don't think I've even seen an FPV pilot in the wild, but other than on YouTube. I can't speak from experience or anything, but from a regulations perspective, the main regulation about FPV flying is that if it's over 250 grams, you have to have a spotter watching your every move because you could be getting into trouble, even though you're flying straight forward and you can see exactly what's happening in front of you. That's the way the rule is. So in the new regulations that I talked about a few minutes ago, there's the way this document is structured. There's a big preamble, like about 50 or 60 pages of jibber jabber, and then there's the actual changes. And there's no changes in these rules for FPV stuff at all, not explicitly. But in the preamble, they make a big point of saying, you know what, all these new BVLOS rules, beyond visual line of sight rules, will benefit FPV racing. And then they explain what FPV is, and then they never really explain what the connection is between their assertion that it will benefit them and what part of this rule will help them. So I was reading it all over again, trying to figure out what are they trying to say? And it finally dawned on me. They consider FPV flight as beyond visual line of sight because, well, clearly you don't have your eyes on, so you can't see the drone. But so here's what you have to do to fly in what they call the low risk BVLOS environment, which is the biggest section of this rule. You have to have a new level above the advanced drone certificate as a pilot, and that is you have to go to a ground school, mandatory. You can't learn off of my videos anymore. You have to go to an actual ground school, and they're expecting that to be $600. You have to go through another exam beyond the basic and advanced exams, and that's going to be a $50 per attempt exam. And for anyone who's done the advanced, if you can get it in 1 or 2, you're amazing. You have to. What else do you have to do? There's another flight review, and they don't expect very many flight reviewers to be qualified to do it. So you're probably going to have to travel to do your flight review, and then you have to pay $150 just to get the piece of paper. a piece of virtual paper, and then you have to apply to become an RPAS operator certificate. Sorry, I'm trying to remember all the terms, and that's another whole can of worms, which is
Even
documented
after all that, you don't
procedures,
qualify.
maintenance stuff. It's madness.
Yeah, but Don,
And what will that get you?
forget.
That means you can race?
Then you can fly FPV all on your own.
But remember, that's
Yeah.
$600. That's
my goodness.
$600. That's less than 8 hours flying with the new benefits we get. So the first 8 hours you're flying, you've covered that $600 immediately.
Right.
Well, that's right. We do $84 an hour of benefits for recreational flight.
Wow.
Yeah,
And the
you
thing
just have
that
to fly a
surprises,
little bit more.
amazes me, is that these people, the ones that are going to tell us how to do this stuff, they haven't done it. And dare say the people that are going to do the practical tests and things, they haven't done it nearly as much as the people who are going to be applying to get this BV or FPV license. It's like the blind leading the blind, or leading the sighted, in fact. There's no recognition of the fact that, and this is worldwide. I mean, BV-loss is the big thing now because drone delivery can't happen without BV-loss. So we've got to have BV-loss. Everyone, the corporates are pushing BV-loss. And instead of looking at the hobby and acknowledging that, okay, we have rules against it, but if you look on YouTube, there are thousands and thousands of videos of recreational flyers flying BV-loss completely safely over long distances. They know the procedures, they know the best practice, they know everything. Why don't we talk to them and find out how it can be done safely instead of making up a whole lot of gobbledygook rules, that we can't be sure are going to work, and then forcing them on people who know better.
Or take rules that are designed for cargo drones and say
I don't even know where to start with it. It's such a mess. Like dealing with the government and all that bureaucratic crap. That's just like, oh my goodness, like it's daunting. Like I can't imagine. What if you're a 16-year-old kid that wants to fly FPV? Now you got to fork out $800 for all your licenses and certificates and lessons and stuff like that. What 16-year-old kid who wants to fly a toy in the park is going to do that?
So where does the compliance come? How do they hope to get compliance? They simply can't, because in Australia, FPV is virtually illegal outside of the little flying fields allocated by the National Model Flying Body. You can't do FPV down the park. You can't do it anywhere else. On your own property, you can't do it without having to make application and do a risk assessment, all sort of stuff. So FPV is effectively illegal unless you're flying at a grassy field with fixed wing aircraft around, and the result is that nobody gives a damn. They just do it anyway. So the compliance is virtually zero.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the way a lot of it goes.
Sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that's good. I was just agreeing with Bruce.
So the Drone Pilot Association of Canada has quarterly meetings with Transport Canada. We have our next one coincidentally tomorrow morning at 10:30.
Okay,
and
thank you.
I'll be kind of zinging them on a few of these points.
Good.
The interesting thing is that the people we actually talk to are reasonable people. They claim to fly drones. I every once in a while I think, why don't we have a Transport Canada Fly Day? So nobody will show up.
They'll all show up in their Mavic minis.
Yeah, at least they show up.
Give them a freestyle drone.
The guys that we're dealing with are actually reasonable human beings. They are, they enter into discussions, and then you ask them to do something, and they agree to do it, and it's really hard to get. They have trouble. Let me rephrase that. They have trouble solving problems because they're dealing with government organizations. Like we had this problem with radio. Like there was a rule that said you had to be on the radio if you're in certain circumstances to, on the aviation radios. And then the guys who control the radios, Industry Canada, said, we don't want drone pilots on the radio. Forget it. They're not allowed. So then they were in this conflict situation where one law said you had to have it and the other one said you can't. So, we said, well, can we go and fix this? I mean, just meet with these. It's been almost a year and they haven't managed to solve it. It's weird.
Safety is one of their top 5 priorities.
It's pretty wild that like all this licensing is coming into, and technically with FPV, if you don't know, using a certain channel or power output on your FPV quad, you're supposed to have a ham license in Canada. Like you're supposed to have all this operation stuff, and they don't enforce that. You know what I mean? So
what is the regulation on that? Is it 1 watt?
25 milliwatts for
25.
analog.
Yeah, you're supposed to be only using 25, and you're only supposed to be using a couple of the race bands. You're not supposed to use all the ones that we use. Yeah.
Show of hands here on the panel and in the chat. Who here has their ham license?
Right. Exactly.
That's,
I
I'm
like
just
ham.
curious. Like who?
I like
I don't
bacon,
think
too.
I've met. Yeah, ham is tasty as fuck. But
Canadian
like, yeah,
bacon,
I
yeah.
don't know anybody.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody who has their ham license except maybe
ham
Bardwell.
community. The ham community is a
decent
really
one, I guess.
good one to compare to, actually, because they've been so disenfranchised recently because the spectrum is becoming valuable like our airspace. And so government keeps clawing back spectrum that used to be the purveying, for hams to use. And they're taking it back for things like 5G and other applications. So ham use is getting squashed and squashed and squashed, just like we are finding the airspace increasingly unavailable to us because of commercial reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, it's not too
So,
far
so
off. The-
again, I've never flown one of these things before. What wattage do you have on your transmitters?
I never go over 2 watts.
Well, transmitter and for VTX, I've gone 2 watts for sure. My video transmitter goes up to 3 watts even. So
And the limit is 25 milliwatts.
milliwatts, yeah, which
Yeah.
is standard, kind of just around. You wouldn't go very far. I mean, if you're just flying 25
Yeah, then
milliwatts, you're flying
like 100 feet.
a tiny drone.
And the interesting thing is, have you
Yeah,
heard
that's
of wide-scale
accurate.
interference with other services on the band? You haven't, because by its very nature, the signal doesn't travel far, no matter how much power you're using. So it's like, again, they've made rules without looking at the reality of the situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they say
And
the
what else is
250
on these
limit is. It's just
frequencies
very
other than-
arbitrary.
What else is on these frequencies
Arbitrary.
other than ham radio?
Weather radar and I think some ground-based telemetry for vehicles, which is virtually not used.
Yeah.
It's been allocated, but certainly in this country, it's been allocated for that, but it's not being used for that. But weather radar is one of the main things. And I mean, maybe if you look on the weather map at night, you see a huge swarm of locusts. That might be someone flying FPV.
And Wi-Fi bands will sometimes interrupt certain channels and stuff like that too. But like it's
But
all
ISM
low frequency stuff.
Yeah. The ICM bands are a bit of a free-for-all.
Yeah, there's a
And if
huge
it's
list. You
valuable,
can download
the
a whole
average Joe
list
will
of
always lose.
yeah, you can download the whole list of different ham and private channels and all that stuff too. I started getting into it more and more because of long range flights, right, and having a radio for emergencies and stuff. So yeah, I only
Well,
got
I even watched on one of your one of your videos, Marcel. You had there were like I think 25 people flying, and one of the things you casually threw in the middle of the video was, "Hey, and nobody's having any interference problems."
yeah. It was only 3 people, but yeah, the so we had the
That's nearly 25.
I like it.
Round
Go with
off.
it. Come on. Yeah. Don't argue with the guests.
What's 22 people between friends? Yeah.
So basically, it was a Mavic, the new Mavic, I think the Mavic 3 or whatever it's called. I don't really follow it too much. Being chased by the O3 unit from DJI, and then being chased by
That's
me,
what it
which
was.
is the analog. So
Yeah, that's right. You had the 3 going around. It was cool. Yeah.
yeah, it's a good one for sure.
Well, FPV races sometimes have up to 8 people flying at once anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but I imagine at an FPV race, when you line up the drones to go, everyone gets their own channel, would they not? Like
More or less, yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
one thing
theory.
rate the race
Doesn't always
times,
work that way.
I
somebody
like
apparently said
4
in
to
the pit will
6
turn
is
theirs on
usually
and kill
best.
everybody.
I mean, they've tried
I'm
it
gonna
with
go to a race
8
and stand
with
outside the
DJI.
gate with my DJI goggles.
They've tried it with DJI pods where they had them like separated and like a certain distance away from each other and stuff like that. But even still, once your drone gets close to each other or something like that, it just the interception, it gets nuts. But with 3 people, it's actually very doable, and the different units as well.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is when we're at our field and 3 people turn up with FPV craft, they're always on the same channel. You've got 8 to choose from. It's always on the same channel.
There are popular ones in FPV for sure, just because the signal is so far away from everything else.
Yeah.
Analog for life. Yeah, so that brings us to that.
Crystals in your radio. That was a long time ago, eh? When did they do it? Like when I was a kid, I remember I had a Tamiya Blackfoot RC truck, and it had a crystal in the radio, and I had to have a different one from my friend and everything. But
Some of us still fly
nowadays they
long
don't do
wire.
that anymore.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Nice.
I actually have a vacuum tube radio. I think it's from Germany. Out in another room in the cottage, and but it never picks up anything. So what I did is I took an Amazon Echo, stuck it on top, and plugged it into it actually had an aux port on the back.
Oh wow.
Needed a little bit of filling to get it in there, but So now it plays like Amazon Alexa kind of stuff, Amazon Music.
Through the tubes, nice.
Sorry, Alexa. Doesn't fucking you. And over this, I think it's from the 1950s. This radio.
Holy, nice.
Huh.
I don't have that
Beautiful
one
stuff.
that old, but the very top one takes crystals up there, but you can't see up there anyway, so no
Yeah.
big deal. But yeah, I got into it just after all that stuff started dying out. People were getting rid of it. Shelby Bull, welcome in. And speaking of Shelby
Bull's
Bull,
here,
we're going to
woo.
play a couple videos here, and we'll talk about why they shouldn't have
Excuse me.
remote ID or why they should, in your perspective. All right, so let's see here. Full screen.
Everybody in chat is reminiscing about their days with 72 megahertz
Yeah.
portable radios.
You try putting a 1 yard long aerial on a sub 250 quad. It's real hard work, man.
Yeah,
It's caught in the props.
Those are telescoping ones that bend if you look at them wrong.
Yeah. We only got about 90 minutes battery life out of them too. Yeah,
Oh,
you
man.
can do a full day's flying.
Yeah.
Oh, Kill Zone. There you go.
Yeah, Shelby Bull, we're going to be checking out that video in a couple of videos after this.
And Jerry is on too.
Yeah, he's been asking a bunch of questions.
Yeah. Sorry, I haven't been watching the chat. It's too hard. I'm not good at this computer stuff.
Oh, it's all good.
So, who's this flying now?
Spagoo. Spagoo FPV.
Oh, he's getting close to that tree, eh?
Yeah, very proxy type. So obviously,
Trying to
this is
tighten
under
up.
the trees.
Nice.
Even if it's a 5-inch, I mean,
That's illegal. Is that tree a Freya?
a tree is a Freya, yeah. It's a maple Freya.
Tria.
Yeah, it just blows my mind that, remote, like even now, with my 5-inch, I'm breaking the law. But, my closest neighbor is like 4 or 5 kilometers away. There's nothing around me but forest and a lake. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
It makes no sense. I haven't flown over a person in weeks. Weeks, you know what I mean?
Right.
The last person I flew over was accidentally I flew over the road and there was a car going by. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. So the worst thing I can do is hit the side of a tree or my own garage.
Because it's not about safety. I've said it's only security. It's
Yeah.
about security. So,
Oh,
some
man.
unrelated third party can be walking through the middle of your 40 acres and see your drone and think, could be a nefarious actor. I need to get my app out and check.
Yeah.
I believe that person would be the first gangster.
Well, that's the other thing. There's no the cell service here sucks. You got to be like standing on a hill with it up in the air to get half decent signal, So
No kidding, eh?
Yeah, they don't
I
need a
don't know
cell
what they
signal to
expected me to
check.
do.
They don't need a cell signal to check your remote ID broadcast, but it's interesting because with the whole networking thing, I'm wondering whether there'll be a few apps that actually, when they are used to detect drones, they then send that information back to a server somewhere through the cellular network.
I'm sure.
Probably will.
Oh yeah, like
Much
collect
like
data and send when you hook up.
Yeah.
Much like these things like Flight Radar 24
Yeah,
that
yeah.
use basically a web-based network of receivers to put up with service. It's quite neat. I mean,
Don't you need cell service to fly in Nevada?
Sorry?
Don't you need to sign in on your cell phone to fly the Avata nowadays? Like, isn't that like you have to plug it in and get clearance
idea.
to even take off your DJI drone?
No, it needs a
I have no
GPS
idea.
signal from your phone if you don't have the Integra goggles.
But you can sign
Yeah.
back out too, I think, or something like that. Or
But if
close
you've
or
got no
something.
cell service, if you got no network, I don't know what good it's going to do to plug into your phone.
It just gets the GPS, so it knows, so it can broadcast the
Yeah.
ground station position as part of the remote ID, which is interesting because according to the FAA specification, it must not be easily disabled or tampered with. Yet you can
difficult to
unplug your
emulate.
phone once you take off, and then it's disabled the ground station position.
Exactly.
Nuts.
That's weird.
Madness.
That was a good flight. I like that. I got a little nauseous in the middle.
I want to see someone do it with an
Oh,
Inspire.
Brandon Beans is here.
Yeah, he's saying
He's
what's
leaving
up.
already.
So we're gonna jump from a 5-inch quad in the trees, not going over the trees kind of thing, to a spec wing ripping through the air, and also not going too high either.
Was this that Shelby Vole guy again?
Yeah.
He's everywhere.
Man, he's spending stuff all over the place.
He's
It's about
he's
7
like
years
the
into the
Joshua
hobby.
Bardwell of wings.
Yeah. Almost.
No, he's a really good wing pilot, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
and
very good.
proximity's my
He made me buy
favorite
one.
form of flying. Proximity, fixed wing, or multi-rotor. It's just the best flying you can do, I think. Apart from chase videos, they're pretty good too.
And also very
Definitely
nauseating if you're not used to the inverted flights that he does.
That's all we do down here in the southern hemisphere. All our flights look like this.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, unless you invert
Gotta
it to
flip
make
the
it
video
proper.
in the Gozos, right?
Always inverted, yeah.
I always thought that'd be a great
You have to
challenge.
invert
Fly
your-
with your goggles upside down. Who could do it?
If you're tuning, does that mean you have to like invert the axes for your gyro?
There you go.
Absolutely. And because clockwise is counterclockwise down here too, you got to reverse your yaw and everything.
Oh yeah.
No wonder why we can't drive down the southern hemisphere.
Right?
Yeah, that's why we're on the wrong side of the road. It's as simple as that. Everything is backwards here.
It's the Coriolis effect that makes you drive on the other side.
You do realise it's October here at the moment.
There you go, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But Brent Ariels has a question. He says, so long story short, there's no plan on introducing RID in Canada yet?
At this point, Gary, there's nothing on the table for remote ID in Canada. There's discussions happening in various committees, and those committees have now closed down. And Drone Pilot Association of Canada has explicitly said that we want to be on those committees next time they start up again. And Transport Canada has said that seems reasonable to us.
Nice.
That we have recreational people as a stakeholder on the. Oh, sorry, I'm watching the video and trying not to throw up.
Nothing against your flying, Shelby.
There's nothing on the book. The new regulations that were announced on Friday for effect, in 2024, 2025, have nothing about remote ID in them. No changes to sub 250 gram drones. It's mostly allowances for large commercial organizations to make it easier for them to fly BV loss and even do test flights without having to go through the SFOC process. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Is there any distinction between BVLOS and autonomous flight? Because a lot of the delivery drones, don't they just get sent coordinates? Like there's not actually a pilot behind them, aren't they?
I think there are pilots behind. There should be pilots behind them, even if the pilot's operating, multiple machines. But yeah, there are things in the regulations about autonomous flight. They actually changed the terminology this time around. I'll have to have a look at see what the subtlety is, but it's now. They used to say you can't fly an autonomous flight unless you have a means to terminate it or take control or something like that. And now they've changed it a little bit. And to be honest, I didn't catch anything that meant any different than that.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, we're luckier than the Americans, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our system works more glacially than the
I don't think they have
Unless you fly
anything in
FPV.
America
Yeah,
about
hopefully
hobbyists
that's
being
not
part of
it,
the
but
panel,
yeah.
so that's a huge step up for us, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the more people that are knowledgeable about the hobby.
Wouldn't it be great if we got the best regulations from every country in the world and put them together into one set of regs? It'd be really great because every country has this little carve out. This, like New Zealand's got shielded operations, which no one else has adopted yet, and Canada's got the no prescriptive rules below 250 grams. It would be great if we got all the best bits of each country and stuck them together and made a international set of regulations that all the regulators signed up to. But they're all trying to do each other. Ours is the best. We're world leading. Our regulations are it's like a pissing contest. Instead of actually addressing the issues, they all just want to be seen as doing something better than every other country.
Who benefits out of this bill?
About I think 3 years ago, I put out I tried that. I actually sat down and wrote out a set of regulations that made sense to me, and it had a whole structure to it and all this nonsense. I called it Don's Drone Rules, and I put out a series of 4 videos that covered each of them in some level of depth. And I think I got about 120 views. So
I think I remember watching.
Yeah,
I think I was one of them too.
190 more than
You
that.
were one of those. Okay.
Well, I did the same thing with, there's only 2 rules you need. Don't endanger people, don't endanger other people's property. Everything else is advisory. It's just a means of compliance with those rules. And that's the way it should be. Because ultimately, as we've seen with the Canadian police, it's not about the rules. It's about your attitude to safety and how responsible you take you have a personal responsibility for what you're doing. And no amount of rules stops bad things happening. It just enables you to blame people when it does.
Yeah. You just triggered something, Bruce, and I apologize in advance, but I'm going to go off on a rant.
Rants.
We love rants.
We love rants. So you guys know about the Buttonville incident, the one that I always call Buttonwood because I lived near Buttonwood Crescent. So just to summarize, police drone in Toronto was sitting basically right at the end of the glide path for Buttonville Airport, and a Cessna was coming in to land and crash right into it. So nobody was hurt, thankfully. Everybody landed fine. The drone was hurt real bad. So the long and the short of it was that the police officer who was flying the drone was fined $1,000 with one count of a problem. In other words, one regulation that he broke, which was interfering with, I think it was the interfering with a aircraft in an established pattern at an airport. 90147 to be precise. So I was bitching and complaining that, what's going on here? He violated at least 10 regulations, maybe 12, and he only got fined for one. And it was a significant, but not outrageously wild fine. He didn't really get slammed like any of us would have been. And I kept looking into the Transport Safety Board investigation, found some weird stuff in there that didn't seem to make any sense. So since then, I put out that video in, I think it was September of last year, and I filed for all these access to information reports. I got the one from the police department almost instantly. It provided some fascinating little tidbits, such as the place where the Transportation Safety Board said that the accident occurred. It didn't occur there. It was about 600 meters off to the west of there, at a higher altitude, which is interesting. The place where the drone crashed, the Transportation Safety Board just says, it was on the side of the road. Well, the York police actually say exactly where it landed.
Transport Canada got him.
And it landed between a nursery school, and this was on a weekday when school was out in session, I guess it's called. Right. So between a nursery school and a retirement home, or a retirement services home. And what a miracle that nobody got hurt. Somebody going along in their walker and gets whacked on the head with a police drone. So those were the tidbits. But just this morning, I finally received the access to information report from Transport Canada, because I went to them and said, what is with you guys? Why did you only fine them for $1,000 and only one count? Are you completely incompetent? Was the subtext, or just being nice to the police? So I got the report today, First of all, it was 400 pages,
Jeez.
most of which was garbage. The only relevant pages are the last two, and I think they did this so that they figured I'd get tired after a few hundred pages. I don't get tired.
They don't know who they're dealing with.
They don't know who they're dealing with. So I get to those last two pages. Now, I haven't done anything about this yet, but it's the actual, it's almost like the transcript between the investigator from Transport Canada and the police officer. Now, a lot of it is redacted, a lot of it, but he actually
398 pages are redacted.
Yeah, there's a lot that's redacted. So he asked the police officer, what was so urgent about this flight that you didn't stop and do all the obvious things? And he was really, like, you could detect anger in his voice just from the words. and the police officer said, well, I was asked to do this and it was important to do it quickly. He said, well, what were you asked to do? It was to deliver a trespass notice to a vagrant on vacant land. That was the
What? They can't do that in person.
Well, they had to do it in person, and the people who owned the property were afraid because the guy had a crossbow. So this is the reaction when the guy says that. He said, in all caps in the transcript, "Really? This was urgent?"
This is something that cops do? Like, I don't even care if it's near an airport or not, but that's ridiculous. Holy crap.
Had to have a drone monitoring the police office, the whole activity, to make sure that nothing went off the rails.
Oh, I thought you meant they were like delivering the notice to the homeless guy with the drone.
No.
Dropping little
that's what I
packages
thought
on
too.
you.
Oh, he's
there was
gone.
a canine unit. There were I don't know how many officers on the ground, but they didn't want this guy to get away.
I'm not the
So they
only
had
one
this
then.
drone flying 400 feet in the air, watching this
Oh,
activity.
that's ridiculous.
So then he lists off all of the regulations that he broke, and it was I haven't actually compared it to my list because I listed them out, but they sounded like the same ones. There were about a dozen violations, and then at the bottom it says, and then I charged him with just the one, and the reason was redacted.
Yeah.
Video on
And
it.
you know
Actually,
what,
Don.
too?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I
I was
watched
just
your
going to say,
video.
and it's not really a fine for him to either, because the police union just pays that fine for him, right? Like, he's
Yeah,
not
it's in the
gonna see it.
coffers.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris, what were you saying?
I watched your video on it, and didn't you say that there was like a jet or a private jet or a Learjet that had landed just before this Cessna was coming, or it's a Cessna that was coming in, right?
Yep, it was a Cessna
it was
that
just a
it
little
collided with, and there was a Learjet or some sort of a Learjet type aircraft that landed about 10 minutes beforehand, while the police operation was going on.
And they weren't in like radio contact with any of the air controlling authorities or anything like that around the airport. No radio contact at all.
That's another thing that the Transport Canada guy just tore this police officer a new one. He said, you didn't go, at least you could have gone on the radio. I mean, he almost said, what were you thinking? It's a fascinating report. I can't wait to do the video on it.
Even I know you're not supposed to go within 4 kilometers in Canada of an
I think it's 4, yeah. I think it's 4 or 5 or something. Yeah.
Well, where he was, it didn't matter what land he was on. If you block it out on a map, you draw the runway, you draw the flight path that a guy's going to land on, and he was right in the center line.
Yeah, he was looking at the barrel of it.
You figure out the altitude, he was right there.
Yeah.
And that's got to be controlled airspace.
And it was controlled
It's gotta be.
airspace.
Yeah.
It's got to be. You got to know you're right by Buttonville Airport. It's not like it's a hidden in the jungle or something like that. It's an airport with hangars. It's right beside the major highway. You got to, if you're flying drones for the cops got to know you can't fly that close to an airport just willy nilly.
Yeah, but they're the cops. They can do what they like.
This same unit, and this same unit trains at the Buttonville Airport. Their helicopter is based at the Buttonville Airport. You know, there's
There's not the helicopter they crashed into.
That'd be funny. Take himself.
There's
Oh,
not the
different
helicopter
province.
they crashed into earlier, though.
Different province.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
They held the record, though, don't they?
They do.
So
Okay,
another
so-
question, Don. These pilots that fly with the police, they are actually cops that are trained as drone pilots, or do they contract somebody else to fly for them?
They're cops.
These guys are actual cops that have their advanced drone certificate. They're fully trained up. They're legit drone pilots.
Do you know
They
if that's
just
in
don't-
every
the
province, or is that
individual
mostly in
did not
Ontario?
care.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that like all
Yeah,
over
I'm sorry,
Canada?
Marcel.
Is that all over Canada?
Well, I'm talking about this specific police force in York, the York Regional Police in Toronto.
Right. I'm just wondering if all police,
yeah.
like allow all over Canada, are gonna have drones as part of their job, instead of, like Chris saying, having somebody who's the actual drone pilot instead of
Well,
taking on that responsibility.
get
and not
quest-
knowing.
I get questions from a lot of firefighters, conservation officers, and police organizations from all over the place asking different questions.
Mhm.
So I think, for the most part, they are actual police officers, part of their aerial unit or whatever. And a lot of them use my
Yeah,
Drone
wow.
Pilot Canada app too, which is I'm
Mhm.
pleased to hear.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure some of the more remote and rural police forces won't have drone pilots on staff, but like Toronto for sure. I'm sure they've got a whole stable of drone pilots in the Toronto police.
Yes, they do. I think at some point I knew the number, and it was like, you have how many? Wow. So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of times with like smaller towns or like hamlets and stuff that aren't like major metropolis sort of things, they won't have their own even like police authority or enforcement authority. They use the federal police, the RCMP, right? So
Yep.
Yeah.
usually it's the trainees that get sent out to these shitty areas to go train up and stuff like that until they get the enough experience to get a cushy job.
Hey, come on! I live in a hamlet, so don't call it a shitty place.
I don't know. I live in Alberta, man. I've seen the asshole of Canada before, so
Yeah. I think that's Brantford, Ontario.
yeah, it probably could be.
Yeah, that's where Gary lives.
Yeah, I said it.
Yeah. That's where Gary's. Yeah.
Who lives
More or
there?
less.
Gary. What's his name?
Gary
on here?
Foster, Brant.
Brant.
I was
Gary.
born in Brantford General Hospital. So
Were you?
Oh, is that right?
That's where my mom was
yeah,
born. Actually.
yeah, I lived just on the road from it most of
My
my
mom
life.
was born that one. That's crazy.
There you go. Does she
Cool.
have a mustache too?
Funny. All right, we got a couple more videos.
Yeah, Xjet,
and,
Xjet, Don, feel free to comment on Marcel's mustache as much as you like. It's free game here. So I think soon we're gonna have a mustache growing competition. So you're
I
welcome
think
to
it's
come
just the
back for
wrong
that.
colour. It doesn't look as distinguished as the white,
Yeah,
and the grey, and the
That's true.
for sure. It's getting there. It's getting there. It's working its way up. This is a buddy of ours, EBR, and I believe he's over in the UK. He flies every single day with his 5-inch, always posting videos and always doing this kind of freestyle,
So illegal.
kind of low to the ground, boxy type, killing it. Really bright type videos.
Yeah. Low and fast is so much fun.
it's only fun till someone loses an eye.
Oh, there's a
Or an
racetrack
ankle.
down there.
I like seeing the sticks on the screen. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a cool,
Yeah.
cool thing that.
Oh, I thought those were his eyes. Oh,
Those are the eyes that we're going to
Googly eyes.
Yeah.
that's
That's
what
why I
I
always
do.
like that guy on YouTube, the No Talk tutorials. He just has like the stick cam, and he doesn't talk about it at all. He just a few captions and
Hey,
tells you to do the
Porsche.
trick
Yeah.
and-
Yeah, there's Mute FPV out there, and he does a lot of tutorials on stuff. I think that's maybe what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Is that No Touch, No Talk? MTT is called.
Oh, it's a different one then.
It's interesting.
You see those new Apple augmented reality glasses, and they've got a screen that displays eyes. I wanted to do that with my DJI FPV goggles. Put a couple of LCDs there with eyes, blinking. I thought that'd be quite cool.
Didn't iFlight come out with a faceplate for the DJI goggles with LEDs in it?
I don't know. I haven't seen one, but maybe they did.
Trippy raving things.
There's nothing new under the sun.
They had a thing. Yeah.
Your goggles are your
Just
spotter.
something else to stick your bed. Yeah.
My son has.
I've considered putting big googly eyes on my goggles.
Yeah,
my
some
son
people
has
do.
googly
That
eyes
looks
on
good.
his
Yeah.
VR thing.
I like the ping pong balls on the strings, you know. That'd be
There you
good.
go. That's even better.
My actual
Yeah. And on the strap, the bow of the arrow sticking out.
It could double as a helical antenna if you're careful. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Years ago, there was a company called Omway, I believe.
Yep.
Correct me if in the chat, but they used to have the camera where you could actually see in front of you while having the goggles on.
That's SkyZone. SkyZone
SkyZone.
goggles have the camera on them. Yeah, they still had them in the probably, I don't know, 4 years ago. But I suggested that to them because I said there's nothing worse than putting your goggles on and then trying to find your transmitter.
Right?
I also suggested to the FPV manufacturers that don't make the damn things black, they just get too hot in the sun, and that's when we got white and other coloured goggles, which I think was a big step forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
For sure.
So silly, too.
Well, soon it'll just be an optical nerve implant. You won't even need goggles. You can just see it as a OSD on your real vision.
Well, Elon Musk is shipping that very soon, he said. It's already available to ship, just $100 deposit, and it'll be at the end of the year. And it'll be delivered by Cybertruck and Hyperloop.
Yeah. If you hear a rumbling under your house, that's your Neuralink getting delivered.
Yeah. By the Boring Company.
Yeah.
Well, look, I
Boring
don't see his
straight into your
observer. Where's the
skull.
spotter? Where's the man's spotter? This is another thing. How many videos do you see on YouTube? People flying FPV, no spotter, and we still don't have any deaths, property damage, or even injuries as a result because the regulators don't have a damn clue.
That's right.
Well, you don't see the ones
in
where
Canada.
they
Aren't you
die
supposed to
because
have
they don't publish
cones
the
and a
video.
vest?
Sorry, say that again, Dan?
I was gonna say, in Canada, aren't you supposed to have cones and a vest when you're flying a drone?
And a map.
Oh, yeah. Don't give them ideas,
Didn't they
man.
have that
People
rule?
say that, and it's so ridiculous. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
Well, few people do, to be fair.
Yeah.
Just makes it easier for the Karens to find you.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm flying my long range drone, I'm definitely I'm with my buddy Conrad, who brings out his wife, who writes down everything: what battery you used, what GoPro session or
Yeah, I see that.
ND filter, or everything, every little detail.
Oh yeah, she's like the secretary from heaven there.
They've got a great team for
She
that
like
kind of
logs the
stuff.
whole thing.
Yeah.
So do you guys
And
actually
she sits
keep
behind him and
maintenance
spots
logs?
the drone too, right?
actually
Not
com-
maintenance
Yeah.
logs, but he does keep like specs of like how much battery he used and everything like that, and where he flew and all that stuff. So technically, I guess kind of like not a maintenance log, but a flight log.
Like, I'm more
for
of a
sure.
flight log, yeah.
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 How do you get on
She's a
in the
keeper.
winter? You're not allowed to take off with snow on your propellers, are you? What if you crash FPV and you turtle up again? Do you have to go over and brush the snow off before you then arm and fly away?
Absolutely.
Sure.
It's
for
actually
sure.
it's actually really hard to turtle out of snow.
He knows that for sure.
It's actually almost impossible. Like 99 times out of 100.
And
you can't
that's why
turtle
you
out of
need a
snow.
spotter, because it's damn hard to find the things if
Yeah.
they're buried in a foot of snow.
Yeah. Yeah. I lost
Yeah, you
2.5
gotta find the
inches in
drone-shaped
snow
hole in
once.
the
It sucked.
snowbank.
Yeah.
Or a really well-trained hunting
Yeah.
dog.
Yeah, I wish my dog would do that. Jeez.
No kidding, right? Actually, where I'm at in Vancouver, BC, we don't have as much snow in the city. We're at like, kind of like a warm spot, kind of like California is on the coast. We get a lot of
They're the
upwind
warm
and all
spot
that
of Canada.
stuff. It really is. There's nothing else. There's no warmer areas in Canada.
I'm
The
thinking like in
Okanagan.
the pool.
Yeah.
So, like, you
Windsor,
guys must get like
Ontario
a,
is actually not too bad.
well,
Pardon?
you
I was
guys
gonna
get
say-
26. You guys get 26 hours of sunlight a day now, don't you?
Oh, yeah, right.
No.
Not close.
No, we get 26 hours of smoke now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's actually really bad. Where I am, like I went for a walk
It
this
is.
afternoon. I felt like I consumed a pack of cigarettes on a half-hour walk. It was
I heard the Americans are complaining because
Yeah,
they
you
can't
can
see the Chinese
smell
spy
it.
balloons with all that smoke in the air.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's when they should be saying, okay, you guys can fly your drones all you want because all the wind and all the motion of the
Yeah.
air. would
Yeah, all the
help
wind
bring
to blow the smoke away.
Come on, let's do this.
We all have to fly them the same direction, you know, to
Yeah.
blow it
Yeah,
out
Yeah.
to sea.
always in clockwise circles. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, we got a couple of videos, and we're gonna call it a night, guys. I appreciate everyone coming in. We're just gonna have 2 more, and
Yeah.
don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Let's see here.
My dog
While
never
you're
minded
looking
my
that up.
quad until I hit her with my Mob 6. I ran into my dog's butt with my Mobula 6, and now she won't go near any of them. As soon as I get it out, she goes inside and like hides behind the bed
Wow, just from a Mobile
because of my
6.
Mobula 6.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They are
before she
loud,
used to like
though.
almost chase my 5-inch.
They're like
But then I just
they're
bumped
like
her butt
the
one day
noise
with-
of those kind of drones has kind of like a higher
Yeah.
pitch frequency for your dogs. I think
Yeah.
probably
And
scares
she's
them
just a
more.
wussy.
What kind of dog you got, Danzilla?
She's like a lab poodle, something like a kind of like a labradoodle mix kind of thing. There's like
Okay.
3 things in her. This is actually my parents' dog, but she seems to spend more time with me these days.
Awesome. Hey, Dr. Quads, welcome
Good
to
ladies,
the
man.
chat,
Cookies.
brother.
Cool.
Alright, yeah, so this is another wing video from our friend Portia in chat.
Apparently, AA, that the smoke has now reached Europe, so
Yeah.
we're starting to
I
feel
was
the
talking to
smoke in
someone in Spain
Europe.
that, yeah, I was talking to someone in Spain who had said, thanks for the smokes.
Also mitigate the effects of global warming. It's a fantastic thing you Canadians are doing for the planet.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, it's like clouds.
All
It
in the
keeps you
interest of
cool.
blocking the sun to stop this global warming.
Yeah. And all you get is complaints,
Yeah.
eh? No gratitude.
No, no
We're
gratitude.
sorry.
We're sorry indeed. Yeah.
Yeah,
How long does it
we
take you
invite you
guys
up
to
here to
get?
fly drones without trails.
How long does it take you guys to get a GPS fixed around your place, around up there in Canada? Is it pretty quick?
Yeah, fairly quick.
Yeah,
I
I
only
haven't
use it
tried
on my
in a while,
7-inch
actually.
drone, but yeah, fairly quick.
Yeah,
I would say like
couple
5
minutes,
seconds.
probably get about
Okay.
a couple minutes, I'd say, if anything. Get about
Right.
20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm still using the
I
M8
don't know. I don't know
GPS modules.
What's going on this video? Because I see the wings moving.
Yeah,
and
it's
the
an
camera's not. So
360.
what's
think.
going on?
It's
Probably
fixed
missed the
horizon.
Or stabilization.
Yeah, fixed horizon. So it's
Stabilization, yeah.
stabilized the horizon, not the.
Oh,
not
it's
the
a
drone itself.
horizon lock. Okay, got it.
Yeah, just crops into the video and bounces the crop around.
Yep.
Kind of makes it so people don't get motion sickness more from
Thank you.
seeing the horizon.
So it depends if you're
change.
watching the plane or the hill.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was a badass one. And that was Porsche.
I'm trying to look at his VTX antenna and his what's going on in the equipment bay there.
I don't know, but he needs an upgrade on that antenna, if you ask me. That's okay.
Oh, for sure. If it's not a
It looked like it was
QRC,
good enough to get
it's
the scene of the
just a
crash.
waste of time.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
That
All
was
right.
good. I like it.
And this is our buddy Flapjack FPV. Chris actually submitted this video.
Flapjack?
Yeah, this guy blew my mind. That's how he flies. It's insane.
Is he Canadian?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Oh,
If it was
just kidding.
if it was plaid, yeah, exactly. If it was plaid FPV, you could say it's probably Canadian, but it's just Flapjack. I don't know. I just found out about him yesterday.
Cool. Yeah, we always welcome new pilots and new content to the channel at FPV Your World here. Thank you everybody for being in the chat and saying hello and submitting questions. This will be the last call for questions though. If you guys have anything you want to ask these two fine folk, or all of us, feel free to jump in the chat and let us know.
Can I put a plug in for an event this
course.
Friday? Or
Please
this
do.
Sunday, I mean, sorry. Drone Pilot Association of Canada Fly Day on Sunday, July the 2nd. All you have to do is fly your drone. Everybody in Canada, fly your drone on Sunday, July the 2nd. Send me a picture of your drone or yourself or whatever, and I will put it in a video montage. My challenge is to send me 1,000 pictures, and I worked out the math. That means a 30-minute video, which is never going to
Nice.
happen. Anyway,
Can I put a plug in as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Please. Is that 2.0 or 3.0? I don't know.
How did I not see that coming? Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely shebang style, as they say. A little bit
I'm
of,
definitely flying on
flippy
Sunday, so I'll
flappy.
definitely send you something.
Yeah, I definitely will be as well.
I'll take a selfie with the goggles on from the drone.
If you guys
Will
need
do.
that email address, I'll pop it in the Discord later on for everybody. And yeah, Robert says, for all of you, how close to wiretap is remote ID? I have no idea what wiretap is.
Surveillance.
Well, yeah. Well, it depends if they get the network, right? Like if it's like constantly monitoring the airspace or whatever.
It will, because it's a precursor to
Then they'll know where
network
you are.
remote ID.
Yeah, that's what I mean. As soon as you plug in, they'll know where you are.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal. The endpoint is network remote ID, and the broadcast remote ID is softening people up to the getting used to having something on their drone that talks, broadcast, and then going to networks much easier than just trying to roll network out straight away as they initially tried to. It's all a psychology game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Boil the frog.
Big brother.
that's exactly what I was going to say. Boil the frog. Yeah.
Or as we say, thin end of the wedge.
Yeah. Ooh.
So you're just looking for pictures, Don, not any video for your montage?
Just a still picture, and if it looks like the weather's going to be crappy on the 2nd, do it today. Do it tomorrow. Do it whenever in the next few days around July the 2nd. Send me a still picture.
And do.
My editing time is going to be insane. So even with still pictures.
No doubt. What network?
Well, in Photoshop,
RID?
you could import all the pictures as layers and then assign each layer to a frame in the timeline and output a
Yeah.
GIF.
Yeah, I can do that. I can do that in my editor. But it's just
Yeah.
getting it nice with the music and all the rest. So.
Yeah.
Save the hobby, eat a politician.
Yeah, pretty much.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody jumping in. Thank you very much.
For sure.
You guys on the next time, but you're always welcome. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice
I
meeting
really
you.
got to meet you guys.
Thanks for having me in.
Bruce, Don. Sure. And everybody in the chat.
And we're done.
Yeah. All right. Have a good night.